Imagine a leader who, at 20 years old, inherited a kingdom and, in a little more than a decade, built the largest empire the world has ever seen. From Greece to the edges of India, Alexander conquered the known world, not only with the sword, but with the cunning, charisma, courage, and the vision that crossed borders. But his legend begins long before his first battle. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedonia. His mother, Olympias, was a claimed descent from the gods, and his father, Philip II, was the king of Macedonia and a brilliant strategist who transformed the Macedonian army. He created the fearsome Macedonian phalanx, infantry armed with long spears called sarissas, able to smash any enemy line. Alexander inherited not only this elite army, but also his father's vision of expanding the Macedonian power. From a young age, Alexander showed sharp strength and an unbreakable spirit. At 12, he tamed the legendary horse Bucephalus, a wild animal no one else could ride. At 13, his father Philip appointed as his tutor not other than the greatest philosopher of the time, Aristotle. For 3 years, Aristotle taught him not only politics and rhetoric, but also geography, medicine, and philosophy. This broad education, though not military in itself, sharpened his strategic mind and his ability to understand different cultures and to adapt to new environments, crucial skills for the future conqueror. They say Aristotle gave him a commented copy of the Homer's Iliad. Alexander will carry that book for the rest of his life. At 20 years old, the young prince became king. His father had been assassinated, and his rule was threatened. Greek cities rebelled, and enemies surrounded the throne. But Alexander acted quickly. He marched north, crushing rebellious tribes. And when the city of Thebes rebelled, he destroyed it. A single message was sent: no one defies the new king. In less than 2 years, his power was consolidated, and his eyes turned east, towards the greatest empire of the known world, Persia. The first fight took place at the river Granicus. Alexander attacked across the water and defeated a Persian force of about 20,000 men, led by local satraps. It was a quick victory, and cities in Anatolia began to surrender. In the Battle of Issus in 333 BC in the mountains of Cilicia, Alexander met his rival, Darius III, who had an army estimated between 75 and 100,000 men. With only 40,000, Alexander used the narrow terrain to his advantage. Leading a direct attack on the Persian center, he forced Darius to flee, abandoning even his family. Alexander, respectful, treated the queen and the princess as nobles. He showed strength, but also honor. The victory at Issus cemented his fame as unbeatable. His next great challenge was Tyre, an island fortress in the sea. For 7 months, Alexander built a causeway nearly 1 kilometer long across the sea while under constant attack. When he finally broke in, about 8,000 Tyrians died and 30,000 were sold into slavery. It was more than conquest, it was a proof that nothing could stop the young conqueror. In Egypt in 332 BC, Alexander was welcomed as a liberator. Without resistance, he took Memphis and founded the famous city of Alexandria. At the Siwa oasis, the oracle declared him the son of Zeus. For many, he was no longer just a king, he was a living god. Alexander was also a master of psychological warfare. His reputation went before him, and he used it to his advantage. He also incorporated enemy soldiers into his own army after victories, showing a vision of a united empire, not just conquered lands. The final clash with Darius took place at Gaugamela in the year of 331 BC. Alexander faced up to 250,000 Persian soldiers. He had only 47,000. By feinting an opening on the flank, he broke the Persian center and again forced Darius to flee. Babylon, Susa, and finally Persepolis fell. The Persian Empire was finally defeated. But Alexander wanted more. He marched east through Bactria and Sogdiana, facing fierce resistance. He married Roxana, joined cultures, and took seemingly impregnable fortresses. With fewer than 40,000 men, he imposed control to the far edges of the known worlds. Tactics alone do not make a general. The ability to inspire and keep the loyalty of his troops through years of exhausting campaigns is what set Alexander apart. He led by example, always at the front line, fighting alongside his men. He was wounded many times, showing courage and inspiring devotion. His soldiers saw him not just as a king, but as a comrade in arms. He shared in hardships and deprivations. His motivational speeches were legendary, capable of renewing the spirit of a tired army. Even in tense moments like the Opis Mutiny, when his troops were exhausted and wanted to go home, Alexander, with his speech and presence, managed to restore the order and loyalty. He also had a larger vision. Alexander sought a fusion of Greek and Persian cultures, encouraging mixed marriage between his officers and Persian women, and incorporating Persian elements into his government. This idea of a Hellenized world was a turning point. In the Indus Valley, Alexander faced King Porus, who commanded war elephants and about 30,000 soldiers. At the Hydraspes, during a storm, Alexander executed a masterful flank. He won and spared Porus, impressed by his bravery. He wanted to march to the Ganges, but his soldiers, exhausted after 8 years and 27,000 kilometers of marching, refused. Alexander wept and turned back. Crossing the Gedrosan Desert, Alexander lost thousands of men, but he returned victorious to Babylon, where he began to plan new campaigns: Arabia, Carthage, and the world. But his body could not bear the weight of his dreams. At only 32 years old, Alexander fell ill. On his last night, when asked to who he would leave his empire, he replied, "To the strongest." Alexander died young, at 32, and his empire fragmented after his death. Yet, his legacy is immortal. He was responsible for the greatest spread of Greek culture across the known world. Dozens of cities were founded under the name Alexandria, becoming centers of culture, trade, and learning that flourished for centuries, like the famous Alexandria in Egypt, with its library and lighthouse. He opened trade routes and set the stage for a great era of cultural and intellectual exchange. His strategy and military tactics are still studied today. Roman generals like Julius Caesar and even modern strategists like Napoleon drew inspiration for Alexander's campaign. He became an archetype of the perfect military leader, a symbol of boldness, vision, and conquest. Alexander the Great was more than a conqueror. He was a military genius who combined a privileged education with unshakable courage, an innovative tactical mind, and a unique ability to lead and inspire. In his lifetime, Alexander the Great fought in more than 20 battles and emerged victorious in every single one. He was never beaten, he never turned back. From sweeping plains to impenetrable mountain fortresses, from raging rivers to the wild jungles of India, his blade carved a relentless path through history. Each clash was more than a triumph of arms. It was a testament to his unmatched strategy and fearless resolve. Alexander did not merely conquer territory. He conquered the very limits of what was thought possible. His life was short, but his impact on history is huge. He did not only expand the borders of his kingdom, but the borders of knowledge and culture. For all these reasons, many historians and military lovers call Alexander the Great the greatest general history has ever known. Alexander did not inherit an empire, he built one from nothing. He was called the Great not only for the vast lands he conquered, but because he surpasses the limits of his own age. In just 10 years, he crushed the mightiest empire on earth, founded more than 20 cities, carried Greek culture to the edges of Asia, and united nations that had never spoken the same tongue. Where others ruled through fear, he inspired fierce loyalty. Where others took, he transformed. Alexander was more than a king, more than a general. He was an idea, a name that has echoes through the centuries as a symbol of power, glory, and boundless ambition. Because Alexander did not seek merely to conquer the world, he sought to make it immortal.